As someone who's reviewed over 180 monitors, this might be one of the cutest yet. The Asus ROG Strix XG16 or XG16AHP-W if you go for the white model is a 15.6 inch Full HD IPS monitor that runs at 144Hz. That makes it quite an interesting proposition for gamers who want to play on the go. Now the monitor does not come cheap. In the UK it can be found for roughly £400 to £450, while in the US it can be found for anything between $390 to up to $550. So is it worth its price tag? Well, we're going to jump straight in and talk about its gaming performance, and indeed here the monitor runs at 144Hz. I had no frame skipping issues to report, at least not on my system, which runs on an RTX 2080 Super, and here I was connected over the micro HDMI connector. Similarly, when it came to its USB Type-C port, I had no problems here either. And we'll touch upon inputs just shortly after, specifically when it comes to NVIDIA G-Sync. But what I really want to hone into over here is its refresh rate combined with its input lag and its response time. And when I was playing a game such as Counter-Strike Global Offensive, I was actually left jaw-dropped. The overall input lag of the monitor is seriously impressive. For those people who are going to be using it on console or indeed a desktop computer like myself, you'll find that the input lag is actually really low, to the point where I would actually happily use this on playing competitive games. Although seeing your opponents is a completely different subject, and in this respect I did struggle to see some of my enemies purely because of the overall size of the screen. But of course I digress. What about in terms of its response time? Now the monitor has a few different overdrive modes that you can select, from level 0 all the way to level 5. Now in level 5 there's a lot of inverse ghosting, and yes, you will get the fastest response time of the monitor, but at the overall visual experience, which makes it pretty much unplayable, at least not to my eyes. And as a result I just dialed it down one notch to level 4, and suddenly all the inverse ghosting pretty much was reduced to completely zero, and while the monitor was still responding really fast. Ultimately, what I'm trying to say over here is that while the response time isn't exactly faultless, it is still very impressive. So much so that I again could see myself playing competitive games on this monitor and not feeling that I'm missing in terms of a high-end gaming monitor. So its gaming performance is seriously impressive, but what about the other features that it offers? Well, Asus claimed this is a G-Sync compatible monitor. Now when I was connected over to my RTX 2080 Super and I was using a micro HDMI to HDMI lead, I found that the G-Sync toggle was not in my NVIDIA control panel. However, this quickly appeared when I plugged in my USB Type-C port. Now in this case, I really did notice a tear-free gaming experience, and running the NVIDIA Pendulum demo, I had no problems whatsoever in this department either, be it in terms of flickering or let's say black screen issues. So moving swiftly on, we get on to image quality, and here the monitor has a 15.6 inch IPS panel, and when I put it across my Calibrite CC Display Plus calibrator, I noted a 91.7% sRGB gamut coverage and a 93.2% gamut volume. You can see here how it compares to the sRGB standard. Now when it comes to color accuracy, I had an average delta of 1.25 and a maximum of 4.25, with a contrast ratio of 1031:1, which is all very impressive for a small size screen. So therefore you can use this monitor for some more professional work, such as for example image editing or video grading. I should note however, this was when I was using the sRGB mode that you can select through the OSD. Now the only limitation of running it in terms of sRGB mode is that it limits and indeed locks the overall brightness at around 116 nits. If you want to run it outside of sRGB mode, you'll note a maximum brightness of 311 nits with a minimum brightness of 20 nits, which therefore means that it can get very dim, so you can play in, let's say, dark room conditions. On the subject of brightness, we get onto uniformity, and here I was actually a little bit disappointed because it's quite a small panel and yet it didn't do well across the board. Of course, this will depend in terms of your own panel because it's somewhat panel lottery. Similarly, when it came to backlight bleed, I did notice a little bit of bleed towards the top and bottom segments of the monitor, but yet again, your panel might be better or worse than the one that I've got tested. So now we get onto the monitor's OSD, and it's really refreshing that Asus have included a really comprehensive OSD in a small size screen. Now in terms of the settings, such as the overdrive mode that I did reference before, I have it on level 4. Adaptive sync, I have it disabled, but of course you can enable it. Just be mindful of the comments I made before about plugging it in via USB Type-C connector. Game Plus gives you some additional features, such as adding a crosshair. In my case, I don't use such features, but of course course that can be handy for certain individuals. Now as for game visuals, I have it on scenery mode, but if you want a more color accurate reproduction, you'll want to run it in terms of its sRGB mode. You do also have user mode as well, which is nice to see. As for image, the brightness, ignore that just because for my camera to pick up, but of course this will be very much dependent in terms of your own ambient light conditions. And as for ASCR, I leave that disabled, that's for contrast ratio. And as for blue light filter, you've got a variety of different modes to enable. I have it on level 0 right now, but it's also handy to have that within the OSD. Now as for color, in terms of color temperature, you can run it on cool, normal or warm, or you can go via user mode and adjust the RGB values. So in terms of red, I've taken it off by 2 notches to 98. As for the green, I have taken it off by 1 notch to 99, and I've left blue at 100. Of course, that's from my own eyes and what I found to be most pleasing when I was looking through different images. Now as for gamma, you can adjust this as well, and the same could go with saturation, but I leave them on default. Now as for power, this is to do with the power delivery to the actual monitor itself, and you can see over here I've got the input pop-up which will show up each time I connect something up, but of course you can disable that if you want. And here you can see the different input devices. As I'm connected up to a PC, I've selected the PC input, and I'm also charging it as well, which is really useful. Of course, if you don't want that, you can disable it altogether in order to use the built-in battery which is found within the monitor. Now as for the auto rotation, it's self-explanatory, and so is the input selection. And as for the favorites, this allows you to customize the first glance favorite that you can have. For example, I've got it on volume. Now moving on, we get onto system setup, and here you have got a few different settings, such as volume. Now this not only adjusts the volume of the 3.5mm jack output, which can be found towards the side of the monitor, but also for the 2 1-watt speakers that are found towards the bottom bezel of the monitor. So yes, indeed, you can output some music, or indeed for basic Windows notification, but just bear in mind that they're not exactly that powerful, nor are they that good sonically sounding. Now as for the power indicator setting that you can adjust through the OSD, this allows you to disable the LED, the small little LED that's found towards the top of the monitor, in other words through the power button. If however you want to disable the LED indicator that's found behind the monitor, in other words the ROG symbol, well, there's no means of fully disabling it. The only way I found to adjust the overall brightness and intensity of this symbol was to actually reduce the brightness of the monitor itself, which I just don't find that handy. Other than that, there's a few other settings that you might want to play around with, including the information which gives you an indication of what the monitor is actually running. Now with the OSD section out of the way, I should talk about the build quality and the stand, because this is one of its key selling points. Now the monitor's dimensions will be on your screen right now, and in terms of the overall weight, it's only 0.9 kilograms. With the stand, however, this goes up to 1.6 kilograms and still is very much portable. Now it should be mindful over here that if you want to use the monitor on the go, the monitor does have a built-in kickstand, and therefore allows you to use it both in a landscape and also portrait format. A nice little touch by Asus. If you do want to use the built-in tripod system, however, well, I must say I'm very impressed. It's got height adjustment and also can be tilted and pivoted all around in different ways, and as a result means that you can find a good sort of setup. I found it quite convenient to use the monitor in my normal desktop setup, of course bearing in mind that it is quite a small monitor in comparison to the rest of my desk, but still I found that the overall stand gave me that ability to use the monitor in a variety of different ways and gave me a little bit of extra ergonomics. Now I should also mention that the stand is very easy to fit. All you'll need is a Phillips screwdriver. Of course, if you go for the model that does not come with a built-in tripod, then well, you'll have to rely on the built-in kickstand only. But the model I have on review is the one that has a tripod, and in this respect it was very easy to get up and go. It has a very nice little locking mechanism, and it's built out of metal, which gives me a little bit of reassurance over time as well. And furthermore, it's just very easy just to move it around and or plug and play. Now to further bolster the overall experience of the monitor, specifically if you're using it on the go, Asus also includes a little handy carrying bag. It's almost like a laptop bag, and here you can also fit the built-in stand, and makes it, well, quite convenient if you want to take the monitor on the go and not have to worry about damaging it. Although note here the little bag is soft, so therefore you might want to protect it with a sort of hardshell carrying case if you are worried about it getting damaged in transit. Now I should also mention the overall design aesthetics of the monitor are pleasing, at least to me. At the rear it's got that gamer-esque look, while at the front it's got thin bezel which stretch around the three sides of the monitor, and you've got a slightly thicker one which houses the built-in speakers that I referenced before. Now it is available in white and black finishes, so if you don't like the white finish and you want bezels which are kind of built into the display or seem to be a little bit more seamless, then you might want to opt for the black color instead. Now moving swiftly on, I should also talk about its battery life. Now, the monitor has a 7800 mAh battery, and here it can be recharged from 0 to 100% in roughly 3 hours. It will also conveniently provide around 3 hours of playback, in other words can be used without a power source, running at 144 Hz. Of course the higher the refresh rate, the more power consumption it will take. Nevertheless, I had no problems in this department, and it's nice to see that the Asus monitor can be used without a power supply altogether, and can be handy for those people who have games consoles such as, let's say, the Nintendo Switch and want to plug into the monitor. Now this perfectly leads me on to connectivity, and there's a few different things I want to touch upon. First off, there's a micro HDMI input and there's two USB Type-C inputs. Now one of the Type-C inputs is dedicated for charging only, while the other one can transmit power and also a visual display. In other words, it's also a DisplayPort cable. Now in my case, I was able to connect this over to my RTX 2080 Super via its Type-C input, and as I mentioned before, I was able to use NVIDIA G-Sync in this fashion. I was also able to output 1440p at Full HD as well. Now better still, you can also connect up a mobile device. In my case, I've got a Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus, and connected over to the included USB Type-C to Type-C cable, I was able to run Samsung DeX and was able to output my mobile operating system straight to the monitor. I found it quite intriguing because my smartphone transformed itself into a trackpad and therefore allowed me to use the monitor. And note, yes, the monitor does not have a built-in touchscreen display, so therefore if you do want to use it in this fashion, you'll need a device that supports touch input, or indeed can be transformed to a trackpad such as like my smartphone, and therefore gives you that additional layer of functionality. And so this brings me on to my verdict. Can I recommend this cute little XG16 monitor? Well, frankly the answer is yes, at least if you are in the market for a portable gaming monitor. From the monitors that I have personally reviewed, I haven't come across one that does well across the board, at least not like the XG16, whereby the overall build quality is fantastic, the accessories that come with it as well are definitely a plus point, the image quality is fantastic when it comes to sRGB color accuracy and the overall gamut coverage, and as for the overall gaming performance, 144 Hz mixed with fantastic input lag and response time make this a very easy recommendation, and it's a monitor I could personally see myself using if I needed a monitor to be playing or using on the go. Now as a result of this, I can definitely say that this is the best portable gaming monitor on the market, and as a result it actually gets my Best Buy award. Now I'd be intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section below as to 1, if you need this monitor or were looking at it, and 2, what do you think about its price? Do you think it should be cheaper, or do you feel that it's a fair price given what else you can find out there on the market? Now if you've liked this independent detailed review, definitely do drop a like and subscribe and hit that bell notification, all of which will be greatly appreciated. As such, I've been Totally Dubbed, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves, and goodbye.